Welcome back everybody, welcome to Journey with Arrows. Today is a very special episode on the channel for a number of reasons. First of all being that we just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so thank you very much to every single one of you that has participated in that and hit that little like button on the video. If you haven't already and you're new to this channel and this is the first video that you've seen, I hope you like it. Obviously all my other videos are arch related. This one's slightly different. Journey with Arrows is taking a journey back in time to the War of the Roses here in England. I am currently stood on the battlefield of the Battle of Towton, 1461, 563 years ago to the date today, when arguably, or certainly most well known as being one of the most bloodiest battles, if not the bloodiest battle here on English soil between the Yorkists and the Lancastrians. I am currently stood on the battle lines of the Yorkists. Very confusing is the War of the Roses. There's so much stuff that's going on and intertwining. This is a battle between two forces, both English. It's a civil war. Two kings, if you like. One guy's blaming another guy, one king's blaming another king. You've got all sorts of personal things going on and political vendettas going on as well. So let's spin the camera around, let's break this down and give you guys a little bit of an in-depth into what happened at the Battle of Towton, which took place here, and the things that unfolded and the blood. So, Palm Sunday, 1461, the Battle of Towton. The medieval armies were arranged into what we call battles. These are groups, if you like to keep it simple. The van, the rearward, and the mainward. Now, the Lancastrians deployed facing south. So, just in front of you here on the brow of this hill is where the Lancastrians were coming in to fight the Yorkists, and the Yorkists were where I am stood currently. Now that's a little bit confusing. The Lancastrians are coming from York, they're coming from the north, and they're coming through Towton and coming to the brow of this ridge that you just see in front. And the Yorkists are coming from the south. The Lancastrians are commanded by Henry Beaufort. He is the Duke of Somerset. Henry Holland, Duke of Exeter, and Henry Percy, the Earl of Northumberland. Contemporary sources say that there's about 50,000 men that pitch battle on this field. Now, that's a little bit of a bone of contention. Most medieval scholars will tell you that we often inflate the numbers in which articles state were at battles, and usually it is the case. Usually they are grossly overestimated in the numbers of people that actually fought or took place in a battle. Now, 50,000 men is what most, if not all, of the sources tell us were here. 50,000 men is a lot of people. I'm going to come back to that because there's things I want to say about that in which more recent discoveries and scholars that I've looked at will flip that on its head, and with good reason too. So we're going to come back to that in a moment. 48,660 Yorkist opponents, supposedly. That is a very accurate number as well. We do have a lot of the muster rolls for the people that were for the people that fought here on the battlefield. And there's so many personal elements that are involved in this. It's not necessarily just Yorkists versus the Lancastrians. There is a mix of people in there. You have people that are coming from villages. The muster rolls give us examples of, say, 10 people that come from one village that decide they're going to fight for the Yorkists. Say we take somebody from Chester. So we have 10 people in Chester or from a village in Chester. 5 of them might decide that they want to fight on the Lancastrian side, and 5 of them might decide that they want to fight on the Yorkist side. And this is pretty much how all the armies formed together. This wasn't one set army that turned up and lined up in front of each other and then clashed in the middle. It's almost a collective group of different groups of people and armies that are coming together and all converging in on this point to then line up and take battle formations. So the Yorkist battles were led by King Edward. That's King Edward IV. Sir John Wenlock apparently commanded the injured Earl of Warwick's troops as well, and John Mowbray, Duke of Norfolk, who had yet to arrive from Ferrybridge. Prior to this battle here at Towton, we had a skirmish or a battle at Ferrybridge, and we also had one at the Battle of Tintindale. So the weather on this day was particularly bad. We had a very strong snowstorm, which is quite unusual for March of this time of year. Not only that, we had quite a strong wind. Now we do have a wind coming here today, and it is blowing from the south up towards the north, which is exactly what would have happened and what did happen on this particular day. Now most of the build-up of the armies, if you like, the people were archers. They were there with the war bows made of yew. The muster rolls also tell us that we have people that were coming from villages that were armed with pitchforks, people with spades and shovels, as well as people armed with knives and swords and things as well. Now here on the battle lines of the Yorkists facing towards the Lancastrians on the top of that hill, Lord Fauconberg commanded all of his archers to step forwards. With their bows prepped, pointing towards the Lancastrians up on that hill, they took their arrows, they drew their bows, and they fired all of their arrows with the wind behind them, and their arrows flew further than what they expected, but they smashed into those Lancastrians, and the Lancastrians had no option but to return fire. Now the Lancastrians were stood on their hill over there, and they could see the Yorkists down at the bottom of the hill. The Lancastrians are getting hit in the face with snow and with the wind and also with arrows. Now obviously a lot of them have helmets on and vision is pretty poor as it is anyway, so they have their heads hunkered down. They're taking shots and people are dropping dead next to them. They have no choice but to return fire. So they draw their bows and they send them flying. But because of the snow and because of the wind and because of the poor vision that they have, they can't tell that their arrows are falling short. It takes them a little while to realise that their arrows are falling short. By that time they have shot a few consecutive rounds of arrows into the Yorkists, and the Yorkists are just standing there pretty much laughing at the Lancastrians as the arrows fall flat in front of them. Some of them might have dared to step forwards and pick up arrows and send them back. Now the Lancastrians eventually realise that the arrows are not going as far as they need them to go. They've got no more elevation in their bows, and they haven't got any more inches in their shoulders or in their arrow shafts to be able to draw back as they hit the Yorkists. So what do the Lancastrians do? We have accounts of the Lancastrian archers simply packing their stuff up and walking home. The Lancastrians had no choice but to move forwards, to enter hand-to-hand combat with the use of swords and shovels and pickaxes, halberds, pole arms, pole axes, you name it. Whatever these people had, now was the time where they had to get physical and start fighting for what they were here to fight for. So the reason that we know that the arrows fell short here on that day is thanks to people like Tim Sutherland, who did all the archaeological work here on the battlefield. They unearthed a treasure trove of artifacts and arrowheads and things that were found here in the ground. Now, we know the arrows fell short because they literally found a line of arrowheads that were left in the ground. Obviously, the arrow shafts and the fletchings, they all biodegrade, but the arrowheads stay there, and that's what's been found. And we know from the bodies that were found here on the battlefield as well, that none of them are archers. None of them have the characteristic types of an archer, whether that be their clothing or their artifacts or the weapons that were found as well. Now the Lancastrians by far have the better advantage on this battlefield. They have the high ground over there, and the Yorkists are down here in the bottom of the valley. Now the only thing that we've currently got going for us as Yorkists is that the wind is hitting the back of our heads, the rain or the snow is hitting the back of our heads, and it's not in our face. We're also waiting on the Duke of Norfolk to still arrive with all his contingency of troops that are still held up in Ferrybridge. They haven't arrived yet. So with the Lancastrian archers having walked themselves off the battlefield and pretty much gone home, the Lancastrians have no option other than to march forward and to provoke the Yorkists into a head-to-head combat of physical fighting. Now, this is obviously a very personal form of conflict. You have people that are getting stabbed, they're being cut, they're being trampled, they're being stood on. The ground is going to end up being an absolute bog. People are trampling over each other. If 50,000 men truly were here, or even a fraction of that, even if there were 10,000 men here on this battlefield, 10,000 people crammed together, not moving, not being able to swing arms. People are probably dying and not falling to the ground. And those that do fall to the ground might not necessarily always be dead, at least not instantly. So back down there on the battlefield, the Lancastrians and the Yorkists have engaged in hand-to-hand combat. Now the Lancastrians by far have the larger number of people on the battlefield. There is more people that have turned out for the Lancastrians, with the king who's not even present on the battlefield, than there are for the Yorkists, who has the king on the battlefield. Now the Lancastrians are winning the fight, the Yorkists are losing. We are being pushed back towards Saxton. Our left flank also supposedly collapses, and Edward has to take charge and reinvigorate his men into standing ground and fighting back. It is at that pinnacle moment that Norfolk arrives, and Norfolk is fresh on his feet, on horseback, with a big army, and certainly it was needed. So I just want to take a moment just to go back to what we mentioned on the original battle lines just south of here. 50,000 men supposedly took part in this battlefield, and about 30,000 people died. Now that is a lot of bodies, and a lot of people did die here. Was it 30,000 men on this field? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. Now a lot of scholars and a lot of amazing work has been done by people that actually suggest and have put evidence forward that the 50,000 men and the 30,000 casualties are probably an accumulation between the Battle of Dintingdale, Ferrybridge and Towton here. All these battles happened pretty much within, give or take, 24 hours of each other, on top of each other, and it all just congregated and ended here at the Battle of Towton for you. This is where we started filming here on the battle lines of the Yorkists, and this is where the Lancastrians were originally positioned on top of the brow of the field. So from here, the Yorkists were firing the arrows towards the Lancastrians, and the Lancastrians were failing to get their arrows to reach back down here. Over time, after much fighting on the battlefield here and the Yorkists being pushed back, we had the Duke of Norfolk that finally arrived and brought these casualties in through around the side here, which then pushed the Lancastrians back up towards where we are currently stood here, up at the side of the wood, and eventually towards what's known as the Bloody Meadow. So the Lancastrians have lost the battle and they are routing for their lives. The Lancastrians are running back towards Cockbeck, which is just behind me here, where the currents flow pretty quick and rather deep. There is a massive amount of Lancastrian bodies trying to cross this little bridge of water for safety. Now, they're taking off the armour, they're dropping the weapons, they're trying to make themselves as light as they can to get across that lake without dying, and obviously to avoid getting trampled or run down by the Yorkists. We have a lot of bodies that die in the rout. Towton 25 is just one specimen which was found on an archaeological dig. It's a gentleman who's taken a poleaxe to the back of the head, and we see this quite commonly in most archaeological finds of people that have died during a rout. All of their traumas are usually taken to the back of the head, whether it be on the back of horseback, where they've been cut down from behind, or in the case of Towton 25, he's probably taken a poleaxe to the back of his head. His body was actually found down at the chapel, Lead Chapel, just on the opposite side here. The Yorkist archers have taken up new high ground, and they are again raining death with their arrows down onto the Lancastrians as they try to cross. There's really not anywhere that these Lancastrian people can go. A lot of them drowned in the water. Either they fall and get taken by the currents, or the comrades behind them are trampling on top of them trying to cross over. We have a lot of accounts that actually state that there are bridges made of bodies in which the Lancastrians at the back of the queue, so to speak, are actually able to cross the water by stepping on their own people. So Edward Hall's account of the number of deaths that were actually at this battlefield is actually 36,776 people, which is a hell of a lot of people. We probably have to take that on the chin with a pinch of salt. We're not entirely sure if that is truly accurate. Some scholars will tell you it's about 28,000 to 30,000, whereas it's probably more commonly believed now, or thought now, that maybe that number is an accumulation of the battle from the Battle of Tintindale, Ferrybridge, and here at Towton, and that it's just all kind of lumped together as one. Now, the Lancastrians' routes, it is believed through archaeological finds around here on the land that there are pockets of Lancastrians that stand their ground as others are trying to retreat over Cockbeck over here. Evidently, we get the evidence for that from archaeological remains, whether it be more arrowheads or whether it be swords, hilts, buckles, buttons, gunshot actually as well. We do have some sources here, and there were elements of guns and gunshot found here in the ground as well. To say the least, the Lancastrians at this point have lost the battle well and truly, and King Henry is probably certainly no better off for that having happened. Now, some survivors did retreat over towards Towton and also over towards York. They tried to hide out there for a little while, but unfortunately were found and were consequently put to death as well. It certainly was a very, very bloody battle, and certainly the bloodiest battle on English soil. We have people from the Lancastrian army and from the Yorkist army as well, of whom I've never seen this part of the countryside before. We've got people that are coming up from places like Chester and a lot of the surrounding villages around there. People who may not have even have left their village before have decided to join this campaign to try and fight for causes, whether it be that they're blaming somebody for losing most of the lands that were claimed during the 100 Years' War between France and England. It could just be that one person doesn't agree with the way that the king is running the country. It could be that he has a personal vendetta, that he fell out with a neighbour who was of the Yorkist origin, so to speak. There is so many reasons why, and it could just be that people are turning up to support the friends and the family who have a quarrel with, say, the Lancastrians or with the Yorkists as well. There really is a lot of reasons as to why people turned up at this battle in order to fight. And as mentioned, a lot of these people do not know the layout of this land. So all the Lancastrians that were up on that hill originally taken the arrow shot, and then for the moment feeling as though they were winning the battle, to then have to rout when Norfolk's cavalry arrives and pushes everybody over this way. They have no idea where it is that they're running into. They don't know where they're running. They don't know what's in what direction. And they certainly don't know that Cockbeck laid on the other side of this hill over here for them. So that just ended up being a massive trauma for those people in order to try and cross that without dying, taking arrows in the back, or drowning it in the water. I personally can't even begin to imagine or even to put into perspective how these people must have felt. It's terrifying enough to be stood on the front line and see arrows coming at you, but to then have to be defending yourself from a personal attack from a sword or from a polearm, and then to have to run and to just effectively sign yourself off. I mean, there's no coming back from that. It's absolutely horrific. And when you're seeing everybody around you drop and people getting crushed and trampled, it really doesn't leave you with much hope whatsoever as to whether or not you're even going to be bedding down at the end of the day. Thousands of people died on this site, both on the Lancastrian side and on the Yorkist side, and the Lancastrian house and nobility took some severely heavily losses. Any survivors that did make it past Cockbeck or off this plateau after the slaughter, that made it as far as Tadcaster or even into York, was subsequently hunted down and put to death as well. And King Edward didn't waste any time in making anybody that participated in this fight as being listed as a traitor and also put to death. It was certainly not a good time had by either party. So when King Henry got news of the fact that the Battle of Towton had been lost, he had the monument built in remembrance of the people that died here at Towton, probably predominantly those of the Lancastrians, but nonetheless the war memorial here that stands is the same memorial that King Henry had put up for everybody that did die here at Towton. Now, King Henry exiled himself over to Scotland, and he took his family, his wife and his son with him. A few of the Lancastrian nobility that did survive, that were lucky enough to make it off of this plateau and past Potterneck River, also joined him in Scotland. And to say the least, there wasn't much rivalry over who claimed his part of the land since then. King Henry decided that he was then going to win over the rest of his participants and the public, so to speak, through other means. Other than what happened on here today on this battlefield, it's probably something that never will be forgotten again for the sheer number of people that died here. And certainly it stood its test in time. Certainly up until 2024 today, when we're still talking about it. And I'm sure it'll probably stand testament for another 500 or so years or so. It truly was one of the bloodiest battles here in history of Yorkshire. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in on today's episode of Journey with Arrows, as we took a journey back in time to the War of the Roses and the Battle of Towton. I really hope you enjoyed this. It's something very different on the channel. It's something that I really enjoy and that I have a massive interest in outside of the archery's history, medieval warfare and the War of the Roses. So if you liked this, please do leave a like on that video underneath. Leave your comments, please tell me if I got something wrong, if I misinterpreted something, if my articulation of words was not understandable, if you've got anything that you want to correct me on, or just give me a thumbs up and say that was a great job and you want to see more of it, then please do like the page, subscribe, follow, hit that little bell button as well. It means everything to me. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, so thank you very much to each and every single one of you as well. But as for today, we've got some seriously strong winds that's coming in, just as it was 563 years ago. My tripod's blown over a couple of times, so before it does blow over and ends up in the mud and the puddles and getting smashed, I'm going to call it quits. I hope everybody's keeping well. Much love to you all, and I'll see you all on the next video as well, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.